So on 7 March 2023, there's this full moon in Virgo, and within the hour of the full moon perfecting, Saturn will move into Pisces. It hasn't been in a mutable sign in quite a long time since it was in Sagittarius. It left Sagittarius in December 2017, and it hasn't been in a sign that it doesn't rule since that same time, December 2017. So get ready. We're about to get heavily mutable with this peaking full moon energy. Full moon in Virgo, 7 March 2023, Saturn in Pisces within hours. Stay tuned. So here we are, this full moon moment, this mutable full moon. It's a wild time. I don't know if you can feel it. I can certainly feel the changes and just feeling the vibe shifts out of Aquarius and into these mutable energies, particularly Pisces. I love the Piscean. We've had the Sun in Pisces, Mercury in Pisces. Now Saturn will enter Pisces this week. And so there's this vibe of art, creativity, all of that Piscean vibe that we get to enjoy here coming up this week. And I'm going to just present a little bit of a slide presentation, dive into this astrology with you. My name's S.J. Anderson. I talk about astrology on this channel. And so the first thing I want to bring in is just the details of this syzygy, of this moment. It's the 17th degree of Virgo here on 7 March 2023. And you can see here that that's the moon right there in the 17th degree of Virgo, ruled by domicile and exaltation by Mercury in Pisces, right back with the Sun in Pisces. And so we can't escape the Piscean, really, can we? Because the ruling planet, this major ruler, is there for the full moon moment. And what do I have here? Mercury floating in the Piscean ocean of dispersal as it rules this full moon. And the other thing about Mercury is it's beneath the scorching beams of the sun. There it is, blocked out from visibility, and it's only about, 9 degrees from the sun. That's clearly under the sun's beams. In the ancient system, that can be a signifier of blockage, of that planet not being able to do what it would otherwise want to do. So we have that with the ruler of this full moon being under the sun's beams and maybe blocked off. Mercury signifies communication. So if we're blocked communication during this early part of the week, don't be surprised. I have here, expect bewilderment and a lack of comprehension to be in the air, maybe a lack of articulation. I mean, it's possible that we're not able to really say much as we're experiencing this great period of mutable change that happens right here Tuesday, 12:40 UTC, and you get this full moon in Virgo within the hour. Saturn comes into Pisces, so we're going to be blending this peak of the lunar energy, the peak of the lunation with that syzygy, that full moon. It peaks, and then we have this other major peak. Remember, the last time Saturn changed signs was in 2020 December, when Saturn and Jupiter moved right into Aquarius, right together on that winter solstice. They conjoined. So we haven't had a Saturn sign change for that long. And they're major events. They really can create a huge vibe shift and tone shift for the whole reality. And so we get that here, Tuesday, 12:40 UTC. And so the other thing, with Mercury being in a state of weakness, it also doesn't have support from its rulers. Look at this. Both the major rulers of Pisces by exaltation and domicile, Jupiter and Venus, are in Aries averse to Pisces. So Mercury then can't even communicate with its two major rulers. Now, Mars does rule by night triplicity, and Mercury's squaring Mars. So maybe if it's nighttime where you are, I think in North America, some places, maybe West Coast, LA, you're going to have that martial reception with Mercury. But that is part of a T-square, a mutable T-square of this full moon. And so I'm not sure how much of a mitigation that may be. But Jupiter and Venus here in this chart are doing this dance of the Aryan initiation, this passion dance is what I have here. They're bringing their power into the initiation of that passion dance. That's part of this full moon moment too. So it may be that there's things that are moving really fast for you right now. Jupiter and Venus doing that initiation, sextiling Mars in Gemini, and we're trying to act here and we're wanting to push through and act, but yet Mercury, the dispositor of this full moon, is so awash in this kind of blocked state. So you can see the competing energies of this moment. So one idea is that things are just maybe moving too fast to process with Mars and Venus sextiling Jupiter and Venus sextiling Mars, that's just too much outer world focus of action. And that with this blocked Mercury, it's confused and maybe not able to articulate. Maybe it's the biggest month of the year after all, right? Mars into Cancer on the 25th of March, 26th of March. Saturn into Pisces here on the 7th of March, and then Pluto in Aquarius on the 23rd of March. There's so much happening. I think it's okay to give ourselves permission to just say, I'm not going to really speak too much. I don't need to figure it all out right now. I could just feel in to these changes. And remember, Virgo is the mutable sign of Earth. So it's Earth mutability. And that mutable signs of their nature are flowing with the ebb of life, right? Ebbs and flows of life. Things are always changing really at some core level. And these mutable signs are good at embracing that change, of saying, yes, I will study it even. And that's what Virgo is the farmer, right? August and September are often harvest seasons. And that's what a farmer does. It studies the intimate changes of the soil and of the landscape and of the crops and of the earth so that it can produce sustenance. And so this is the nature of a Virgo full moon. We might be drawn into some of this, detail-orientated focus on the body, on the home, on the earth. Yet Mercury is blocked and muted and in this kind of poetic sea of Pisces. So keep in mind these tensions of energies. And sometimes the inspiration is what we need to go into the detail orientation. It's like the dream state, or a lot of times artists will say, I was in the shower when the idea came. Or the song came to me in my dream. There's these Piscean, non-verbal, non-traditional ways that we can receive messages. Then we wake up and we have the solution to more practical, Virgoan, earth-orientated problems. And so that may be what could be happening here as well. And more about the poetic release side of Pisces. It really does have, particularly Mercury there, a reputation for poetry and poetics. Words can break free from their strict definitions. That's the genius of poetry, isn't it? You don't need to rely on the dictionary definition often. You can invent new words. You can put them together in ways they've never been seen together. That's the task of the poet. Shakespeare invented a bunch of new English words in his poetic plays and in his sonnets. So there's this freedom that you get when you enter the realm of poetry to not rely so much on how words have been deployed. They can be deployed in new ways. And in this case, I think of Ezra Pound, the great American poet. Problematic, yes. Towards the end of his life, he did have a reconciliation with Allen Ginsberg, and there was a lot of healing that was done for some of his political activity earlier in the century. But with Pound, his whole idea was make it new. Make the reality new, make the poetics anew, make the language new. This real edict or imperative to not embrace language as it's been and instead reinvent it effectively, mutate it. And I think we can think about Pound here with Mercury and Pisces ruling this full moon and just understand that there are new ways we can communicate, different strange ways of understanding and receiving messages that may be very much a part of this moment. Pound, if you look at his chart, he has a B-rated chart. But with that B-rated time, it's Aries rising, 0 degrees, 11 degree minutes. So he's maybe a Pisces rising. And of course, he's got the South Node also in Pisces. And so either way, there's some really nice heavy activation for Pound. And, just to come back, as you're feeling into this moment, that's my key word here, feel into it. Uncharted and maybe unknowable territories with this mutable activation. We're feeling into it. And, you may want to write with your offhand. You may want to dream or write down your dream when you wake up, or try to speak in a new language, even an invented language. I think some of this can be guttural when we can just make sounds as opposed to words. This can be a way to kind of feel in or process with a Mercury in Pisces moment. And this such a heavy full moon. I mean, Saturn shifts into Pisces within the hour. And all of the changes. And so it may just be like, sighs, or just go out into the woods in the park and just let yourself kind of yell or articulate, or just free writing is another great keyword here. If you've ever done any writing, when you do free writing, you just put the document up and let it go. It doesn't even matter what's there. You let it go and you let it go on the page. By the way, I saw this movie, The Whale, this week. God, it made me bawl. I watched it twice, back to back. And there's a scene where one of the characters says to another one, just write what's real, write what's true. This becomes a major theme of the film. And then this character starts writing like really, kind of aggressive things. And then the other character's like, hey, it's real, it's true. That's all I wanted to see. So there's something about truth that's very Piscean. The struggle for it, the search for it, the maneuver within the often unknowns that truth can imply. And so you may do that here, writing into this, what is real, let it go unrestrained with the way Mercury will behave during this syzygy. So I want to come back to Mars and Venus and Jupiter here, and you can just look in the chart. Venus and Jupiter are very close in Aries, overcoming by sextile at Mars and Gemini. It's a highly productive energy. These are both day sex signs, very active energies with these two zodiac signs. And both of the benefics flood their ruler, their domicile lord, from earlier in zodiacal position. And so something about this means that the make it new, Ezra Pound's edict, we're focused here more on the make maybe, because of how dynamic the Aries and the Gemini are. And you might be just into your life right now. We're right here on the cusp of spring. Maybe there's a lot happening and you do have a lot of clarity after Mars stationed direct, after Mercury is stationed direct in January. You may just be moving into your reality. And that's okay too. We don't always need to have an ongoing dialogue of describing every little thing that's happening. We can just get into making things and doing things. And I feel like that could be what this full moon's implying as well, is less of the Mercury in terms of the dialogues and more of the outward hand use to produce something like this. Hands like tools. And as a metaphor for just whatever you're doing, just stay hot, stay active, keep moving forward. And this whole reality is about to get heavily mutable. And so I want to spend some time here thinking about what Saturn and Pisces might be about. What are some of the core themes within the hour, less than an hour? Saturn comes into Pisces. So it's a blend here of the full moons are always peaks of energy, but this is going to be a unique peak because it hasn't been since December 2020 that Saturn changed signs. It hasn't been since December 2017 that Saturn was in a sign that it did not rule. So this is a major moment here of a peak of all of what Saturn has just done in our astrology and our lives, therefore, what we have done. 2020, 2021, 2022. And so there's like a peak climax here of like, wow, of a release into something new, different, and strange. The unrestrained Piscean is what Saturn's about to enter into. So keep in mind, Saturn's ingress blends with the full moon here on 7 March, right about midday here, 1435 is when Saturn's ingress happens. So sorry, 1435 is when Saturn's ingress happens. The full moon is just before that. It was a UTC like 1240. And so this is UTC 1:35 p.m. when Saturn ingresses. So Saturn in Pisces, what is it? Changes that challenge and challenged by change. And so we have changes that are challenging us when Saturn comes into Pisces. New and different sounds, new and different ways to process reality, new technologies, almost new everything in the reality. How do we process and interface with it? How do we change from all of the Aquarian upgrades, so 2020, 21, 22, and now how are we grappling and using these tools to create? Pisces is a creative sign. Pisces is Jupiter and Venus ruled, both creative energies of expansion and hope and wisdom. And so in one sense, I think there's an unknown here, and it's going to make things maybe rough for some of us. How do you use AI? What happens when AI is everywhere? And what is real? What isn't real? Is this news story real? Is it not? We may not know these things. What about new art forms that come out? They sound different, weird, and strange, like Dylan going electric. Ooh, I don't like that electric folk music. Well, and it might be that in 3 to 5 to 7 years, you're digging it and you're really liking this folk sound or the electric music or any of the new creative combinations of genre in the arts. All of that's about to arrive with Saturn and Pisces. And I think in one sense, you can use grief as the example, because remember, grief is not something we control. Grief is a signification of Saturn. It's a circuitous process by which we cry and then we feel better and then we get triggered and then it's years later and we still get triggered and then the sadness comes up and then we're still healing. Grief is a never-ending journey of integrating the past And it does get better and settle over time, but it's not something we are controlling. There's no beginning and there's no end, especially if you've lost someone very dear to you. You never get over it. You just learn to live with it. And so in one sense, I think there's this part of grief that's the unknown part, but the other side is the opportunity. The gift is that it's the unknown, because you don't have to control. You release into something you don't have, day-to-day control over. And so it takes the pressure off in a way, it takes the responsibility off. And in that sense, it's a source of great power, because it's like, okay, it's not me. I'm part of this greater whole. This is a Piscean realization. And I'm one node in a process of many nodes of unfoldment in the collective reality. And so there's some freedom that can come. Jupiter signifies freedom. Jupiter rules Pisces. It's releasing into this unknown that can free us from needing to control. And then you just come to the Tarot. I love the World card, signifies Saturn. There's no way to build new, complete realities without a Saturnine component of the container by which that new reality will be held. Saturn does that. And so wherever it is, it's a wonderful opportunity to build those containers for our lives in those sectors. And I think with Pisces, it's creative containers, it's containers of healing, religious and spiritual containers, all of that. Saturn will help us kind of morph into new and better and stronger foundational principles and our architecture in our lives. You look then at the Moon card, which corresponds to Pisces, and this is this uncontrolled state. Right? You see these howling dogs. You ever seen a dog howl? I've got one here. I saw it the other day. There was a cat, and it went nuts. It unleashes something primal. That's also a Piscean. Remember, Mars has a rulership component over Pisces, night triplicity. And so there's a kind of primal urge that we can release into. Again, I go back to grief. These are very primal experiences for humans, to have loss and to weep uncontrollably. If you've ever done that, it's the most healing thing, to just let yourself cry and release into the uncontrolled tears and let them wash and heal. This is the kind of way by which we'll lay new foundations, is kind of letting go into what we thought was okay or what we thought needed to be, and freeing ourselves and crying if we need to let go of those old visions or those old versions of ourselves. It's okay. We're moving into something new through this lunar, and then in that sense, water, this Piscean, Saturnine, the world, the moon. All of these energies are about to hit, and it's going to be a source of great creative power. The other movie, just to bring in here, this film called Arrival. It's 2016, I think, when this was released, when Saturn was in Sagittarius, so we had a mutable Saturn. And this film is so interesting for this full moon, because I think it's a perfect analogy. In this movie, Amy Adams is a linguist, Jeremy Renner is another scientist of some kind. These aliens come, and they start sending these messages that are incomprehensible, unknown characters. They didn't even know it was a language at first. It was just these weird circles and shapes. Again, Mercury and Pisces under the beams. What the hell is this? Is it even communicating anything? I don't understand. I don't get it. I'm confused, right? Key words from Mercury and Pisces. And so these characters struggle through this journey of like trying to comprehend. And eventually they get to the end of the film. And obviously, because it's cinema, right, the confusion leads them to places. They feel into the strange. They go with their intuition. And eventually they make sense and decipher it all. And then they save the world effectively. But I think this is the way we can think about this Mercury and Pisces ruled full moon, of feeling into the unknown, realizing there may be messages that are being communicated, but we don't have to know what they mean right now. We can just keep the intention of wanting to learn, wanting to comprehend, and maybe there's times later this year when we'll be able to do that better after March, this bellwether year, after Pluto's in Aquarius for 2 months, after Mars moves out of Gemini and Saturn has settled into Pisces, and after this eclipse season, 20 April, big eclipse season. I think everything's going actually to this eclipse season in a certain way. First eclipse in Aries, but wait till June. We're settled into many new energies by June. Maybe then we'll have a great understanding, or a much greater understanding of what messages we're being given now. And that would fit with something like Arrival. Mercury in Pisces isn't designed to have complete and total intellectual awareness and comprehension of things. Okay, so I wanted to look at one electional chart for this next cycle, this next waning phase of the lunation. And this electional chart, it's really the only one. The issue right now is that you've got a Venus that will be weakened during the moon's trip through Libra. Venus is in Aries. Now there's mitigations, but it's not the ideal Venus. Scorpio moon always off the table. Sagittarius moon is nice, but it's still opposing Mars, and it would be squaring Saturn, I believe, by the time we have that Sagittarius moon. And so, yes, definitely. So that next Sagittarius moon gets a pincer between Mars and Saturn. That's a real difficult moon. Then you have the moon exiled in Capricorn. You have, with Saturn in Pisces, not as strong. Then you have, this is the moon I'm picking out for just one to think about or feel into. It's the first Aquarius moon with Saturn now in Pisces, and the only Aquarius moon that will have Saturn in Pisces and Pluto in Capricorn right now for this little pocket of time we're in. We get this freed up Aquarius sector, no planets there except the moon just traveling through. And so you may want to enjoy a settled in, maybe less dynamically activated Aquarius sector. And look what the moon does. It applies to this square of Venus in Taurus. This is going to be a lovely moon to kick off Venus in Taurus. It activates it. And it's that first Venus in Taurus period without Saturn in Aquarius. So I think we can do a lot of that Venusian lunar stuff with this lunar activation and this Venusian activation. I have an opportune moment to immerse ourselves in the nation architectural framework of the new post-Saturn Aquarian era prior to the imminent arrival of Pluto on 23rd March. But again, I'm focused on it as an election because of that application to Venus. If you can just get it there, squaring Venus, that might just feel good in those initial moments. It also sextiles Jupiter. And so you've got a double benefic activation with this moon, and it's averse to Mars and Saturn. So it's just, of these upcoming moons for this phase of the lunation, this is my one that I would offer as just something that's better than the others. Again, this is not like an electional chart. I wouldn't use this for some important election. Only if you had to, you could wait and try to do something under this Aquarius moon. By the way, it's not averse to Mars, it's trining Mars, just to be clear. So, all right, that's the election. And all right, thanks for being here. Glad to break down another full moon on this channel, and just love to follow the astrology. You can always go to my website, sjanderson144.com. Check out my reading schedule, it's all there. Got an updated site where a lot of information is there about how I read and what I do in reading. So check that out if you haven't yet. And I'll talk to you very soon.